And I'm muting myself. So welcome everyone. For our LinkedIn Live session, my name's Scott Dunn. I'm a certified Scrum trainer and certified enterprise coach. And today we're going to be going through a number of pieces of a framework we really like called Path to Agility. And we'll kind of share about what is it that we like about it, what's the feedback that we get from the clients where we're coaching, give you a couple highlights. It's a lot of information. So in the end, might be just that you have some takeaways. So we just went live. So I'm going to double check to make sure we're all set up for any questions you might have. We can do live questions and answers on LinkedIn. So look for that. But also kind of review again what we're talking about today as people are joining us, because you get alerts and notifications, and maybe you just saw it pop up and you thought, I'll take a listen. So our goal is to keep putting ourselves out there as coaches, to share what we're learning in the trenches, what we find most valuable from the training and from the workshops, give you ideas of what that's about, give you nuggets of helpful information. If you've gone through the class before, it might be a nice review. If you haven't gone through the training classes, you might have questions about it, so you can ask those live. But in the end, really our intention is to help you take whatever that next step is, give you enough information that can be of practical use, even just from these live sessions. And if you're interested in digging deeper, then yeah, check out the workshops, check out the free preview hours that we do, connect with others and see how that might look for you. Help you guys figure out, find and take your next step. Is a really important piece of this for me. So I'm going to also, I know as of today in my backyard here in Nashville, not technically my backyard, but here in Nashville, is the largest Agile conference of the year, the Agile 2022. So I wanted to put in something, let those people there know that they can join in live as well. So I'm going to take a link to our session, see if people want to join. And I see that, there we go. I see it's showing up on live on LinkedIn. That's great. I'm going to grab this right now and put this out there. How? Well, I guess. Oh, here's so I can share this. So, it only shares within LinkedIn. Like, too bad if you're not on LinkedIn. So, but if you're on LinkedIn, maybe you can grab the link and you'll put it on. I was gonna put it on Twitter for hashtag Agile 2022. So, let's dive in. We try to keep these within 10, 15 minutes, sometimes 20, but try to keep it short and sweet so you can take a little time out of your day and listen in. This case, we're close to lunchtime on Pacific time. That's where we started, was on the West Coast, but also Central time, hopefully early enough in the afternoon. Maybe you have a chance to kind of take a break in your day, take a look at what we got. So for those who are just joining, today we're going through just an idea of what Path to Agility is, why we think it's valuable. And we won't be able to cover all of that. Great, thanks for the feedback. We won't be able to cover all of it, but give you an idea of the starting point and to do another session maybe on the nuts and bolts of that. So let me lay out, where does this sit? One, within our training workshops, but also as a coach, where do I think it sits? So it's been, for those who know me know I've been around for a while. I think it's been over 15 years as a Scrum Master, Agile coach, certified Scrum trainer, etc. What I've seen from the years of coaching, I think it's upwards of 17 companies that we've helped or have led the transformation efforts. Just want to be clear, showing up for a day of training or 2 days of training isn't helping with the transformation. That's just training. I mean, like, you're engaged and you know what's happening. You can point to things going on with the transformation. Who are the folks leading it? Where are the areas where they're getting snagged? They're running into blocks. What's the time frame of the transformation? What are the goals of the transformation? That's what I'm kind of talking about. So based on those, two things that have really helped my coaching, besides the time at Rally and at Big Visible and the great coaches there I got to work with, is one, what's in the Certified Agile Leadership organizations class around competing values framework. Now, if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see a number of videos kind of giving a quick overview about the competing values framework. If you look at our history of LinkedIn Live, so just go to the previous sessions, you'll see a session on competing values framework. We like that a lot because it says what's the company's culture to make sure it fits. So based on experience, if it doesn't fit the culture, it's not going to last, as well as what's the company's goals. What do we need to do to move there? And I love the respect for culture. I love that we have a cultural goal that's kind of a why that's around it. And then we figure out what we can do, which is great. Partly the complementary piece of this, though, I think, is Path to Agility brings in and that is, what's the company's goals? What's our business objective? So the business wants something, or wants something from the Agile transformation that's going to give them. We want to keep that in front of us. We want to hook the work that we're doing in alignment with that, obviously, but also, as this can really support getting those goals met. So if we get results that leadership sees, we get more support, we get longer time frame to make this happen, we get more funding, et cetera, to make that magic happen. Culture is wonderful. It needs to be there for this to succeed. But if we lose sight of the business's goals, I think we put ourselves at risk or at jeopardy. So that's one. This is an approach that keeps the business goals in front of us. And two, the workshop itself and the way that they approach it is to start with leadership and say, what are those goals? Because they're the ones who would know, right? So now you've got leadership engaged at the start, not a handoff with the Agile transformation to someone else or to IT or whomever. And obviously the stakeholders have expectations. We're just not being good about getting clarity about what those are, getting the right people in the room, these leaders, to talk about that, and then have a way to kind of tie back the efforts that we're doing back towards those goals. Close the loop in terms of what does business want, and are we doing the things with our transformation to get us those? And if not, if we can't get it done, you got a wonderful reason to get right back in front of leadership and say, hey, as part of trying to help you hit those goals, here's a couple of things that we need. So I really like that it puts leaders in the beginning, right in the front. It gets a way to get them engaged and keep them engaged, and a feedback loop for you on how we're doing towards that, as well as just a great tool to do assessment and saying, how healthy are we anyway? So I like it for that. Thank you, Dwayne, for that. I can't stress it as someone who's done too many. Is it possible to do too many CSMs? As someone who's done a lot of certified Scrum Master classes, and they're foundational and they're important, I don't want to lose sight of that. Business in general seems to have somehow gotten the idea that, oh, well, we got all that we need because the Scrum Masters went to the 2-day training. That was, I think, maybe adequate 10 years ago. It is not adequate for the complexity that we're facing now. So there's so much more learning and training and growth, as well as just get support for coaching. So yes, more than 2 days, and then get coaching help as well, I think is just critical. Not just me saying that. Look at Salesforce's, their case study around their transformation. They'll say, we should have gotten more coaching, gotten it earlier. So let's hop over to, thanks for putting the link to the Path to Agility, for finding out more. We are doing a class August 1st and 8th. So it's a 1-day class, but it's broken into 2 4-hour chunks. Hopefully that makes it easier for folks on both sides of the coast to kind of get that in. Let's hop over now. I'm going to do a very brief walk through some of the information that's in the class and get an idea of what that's about. So I painted the picture about where does Path to Agility fit in terms of me as a coach or me as the transformation lead who's been asked to say, guide this transformation, make sure it goes well, et cetera, right? So this is kind of gives you a nice set of tools to really be successful with those kind of expectations put on you. The workshop itself, like I mentioned, 1 day, this training will give you everything you need for that. Ideally, you now run that privately at the company with those leaders around, but the training is going to give you all those tools and a quick walkthrough of like, what does it look like? What does it give you? So within that 1 day, we'll look at that right now and say, this is what's in that 1-day training. And it's a mirror of what you then run internally as well. So it kind of puts you in the starting blocks for that. So let's take a look. I'm not going to go through everything, but I think what I'm going to go through is the core nuggets of that in like 10, 15 minutes and give you an idea of that. I'm double checking there's no other questions. Good. Oh, and thanks for the link on shaping culture. Good. A lot of good stuff there. So I'm going to switch screens. We're going to hop over into the core content itself. And you should see a Miro board, not Miro, but this was sitting over in Miro. So when we're looking at this, I'm going to hop over past typical transformation changes. I'm going to hop into what does Path to Agility bring to the table. And we're looking at when we ran it with the previous class. So there's some notes on there, but I think the notes are helpful. So you can kind of see what someone did. So if you've been around Agile for a while, or certainly if you've been a coach or if you're an Agile transformation lead, that little bright yellow curve should look familiar. That's just the tier change curve. And whenever we go through a change, whether that's in work or life, whatever, we typically go through this pattern of here's our normal, we take a dip, and then we figure things out and get to our new normal. One thing that's nice is out of the gate that they brought to with Path to Agility is, how about we kind of phase that out? Because if I can look at the phases we normally go through as part of this change, that way we don't have to say everything that people say we should do with Agile. We don't have to do that all at once. What's our starting point? to begin with. So consider the phases you go through typical change. Number one, are we even aligned? What do we expect that Agile is going to give us? What all groups are involved? Is this mandatory or is optional? Is this a one-size-fits-all approach, or does every team get to choose their own, Agile approach? Is there going to be training for everyone? Do you have to request training? Is it my own department's budget? Is there a transformation budget for the training? Right? There's lots of questions out of the gate that we start with. Are we allowed to use Kanban? Do we have to use Scrum? Does every team get their own Scrum Master? Right? So let's get alignment first. Then, if we're all on the same page, your next phase, we're looking at learn. I'm going to just drag this in a little bit. We're looking here now at learn, figure out what it is that we're doing, for where we are now. Then we can get predictability going because now we know how to do it and get that done right. Then this fourth phase, we get acceleration. Now we're getting faster. And then finally, the ability to adapt or be a resilient organization. But I just want to highlight, if you look at your leadership, this is sometimes where I think we go off track in the beginning, and that is, what do they expect from Scrum and Agile? And hey, we're going to go Agile. Usually they're expecting we're going to be faster. It's going to take less time to get things done. My teams will be more productive. Well, what phase is that? Well, that's accelerate. So they skip right past alignment. They might assume that we are aligned. They skip right past learning. How hard can it be, right? And then past predictability. What's the point in that? So we phased it out. So maybe we set expectations at the beginning, we're all for being faster. Just make sure, right? We would talk in terms of crawl, walk, run. We might all know that. I don't know if leadership understands that, or what we might say in the Agile circles is shuhari. Get those basics down and then go from there. So we phased it out so they can see very simply, we need to get alignment first. There is a first phase. As well as everyone involved, let's not tackle everything. Let's just focus on getting alignment first. So I like that phased approach. I also like it that we have an ability to look at the levels that we're dealing with. And again, folks who have been around will probably recognize this, but let's just take a look of all the Agile efforts. Some of the confusion sometimes comes in, are you talking at the team level? Are you talking about at the team of teams level, or you could say system? Or you're talking about the entire organization and leadership. So scaling, common issue, right? But that's at the system level we're looking at. And leadership, right? We mentioned already about culture. That's part of at the leadership organization level. The teams might recognize culture, but can they really shape and change culture, paint the vision of where the culture needs to be? It's probably best left in the hands of leadership. So that, also the barriers that we hit in terms of business agility, which is now goes outside of IT, like in areas of how do we fund projects, finance, accounting. What about the other departments like operations or marketing, et cetera? So again, at the organization level, how big is that? So when we talk about what we're going to do in terms of going Agile, you also want to look at those tiers that we're tackling and focus on those. All we've done so far is kind of slice and dice when we say go Agile. What at the meta level, what are we looking at? But I would look at now saying the kickoff of this is saying, what are the business's goals? So this is a piece that starts us off in that direction with Path to Agility. You can see right here, they're kind of saying, here's the 9 areas. If we're in a workshop with your leadership, they're going to vote, right? Vote up, so we get that kind of clarity. In the class, we would actually vote and practice this and pick one. Because think about this. Here's the metaphor I've been using. Is if I go to a gym and I say, I walk in, this is awesome. Look at all this amazing equipment you have, like one of those big mega ones. If I say, hey, I just got a membership, to the person behind the desk. What equipment should I use? You guys have so much stuff here. What would that person behind the desk probably ask me? And the common answer is, well, what are your goals, right? So depending on your goals, big difference between running a marathon or I'm trying to get more muscular, right? Hey, my friend said I should be lifting weights. And, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to be running a marathon. I don't know if I'd want to add 10 pounds of muscle and then go and run for 26 miles. So same here. What's the goal? And depending on the goal of the business, we're going to look at different Agile outcomes that we would be after. Those Agile outcomes then are built on the capability we have within the organization and now down to the practice. These practices would get us that, right? So if I'm looking at, I want better quality as an outcome, down to the practices levels, are we doing pair programming? Are we doing test-driven development? Do we have test automation, and test engineering? Does that happen? Those are practices that if you do those over time, you should get an outcome of better quality. So we can kind of look at that stair-step approach. So in this case, we begin by voting up the Agile outcomes. And once we voted on here, down below, you can see based on that, and we grab one of the cards for the class, if I have a goal around predictability as a starting point, I want to be really clear, this is not prescriptive. We're just trying to put you in the starting blocks and say, consider these things, right? If I'm going through a transformation, lots of times like, I don't know, do agile stuff, right? And everything becomes a possibility. You should do hackathons and mob programming and, all these things like, well, depends on what you're after. So in this case, if we say we want predictability, that was the optimizing goal for one company. What do we need? Well, as agile outcomes, we would need the ability to measure, right? If I'm going to be predictable, that would probably need visibility. How do we get measurements on things that aren't even visible yet? We need things like team ownership. But look at the color, right? We're already going from darker blue to lighter blue. So I'm just at the learn phase, figuring those things out. And now we'll get into the next phase. So that's where we start getting predictability around some of that. And you can see it kind of stops there, which makes sense. So if that's a starting point, let's just pick a look at one of these outcomes and say, well, what all is involved in that? And by the way, I know I'm zooming in and out and moving around. This is just to give you an idea of what's involved in that. I'm going to slide over to our big map. This makes it a little bit easier. Here's all those outcomes, but they're just mapped out. I'm just going to grab one and say, what kind of capabilities would we have? I think we had ability to measure. Here it is. So I'm just sifting around. But all I want us to see is, I'm going to click over. This is like a parent-child relationship. So in this case, this is ability to measure. Here's the capabilities I would have. I would have the capability to have, here it is, system level transparency, data collection, metrics that drive action. Now we have acceptance criteria under these capabilities. Like I have that capability, I have transparency. What does that mean? I'll know that's done when. And we get to this granular practices level recommendation. One, I think it's great to have a recommendation at that level that ties to the business's goals. But secondly, you kind of now have the ability to do assessments and say, are we doing that or not? Not just an assessment, are we doing that or not, but a feedback loop back to leadership saying, you want better predictability, the team's still asking for X, and they're saying we're not getting it. I can't get you what you're after, leadership. Could you help us? I think it's so valuable, so important. So let's take a look at these acceptance criteria, see what you guys think. So data collection, I'm going to go to this last one, metrics drive actions, because this one comes up a lot as class, is very valuable, and I like it. When we say metrics drive action, what does that mean? Well, here's our definition. Metrics associated with collected data are defined and are used to drive change. So what does that mean? It means I have the criteria, decisions on program and team level execution are made based on people's opinions, loud voices, seniority. Right? No, our decisions on program and team level execution are made based on data. So how many times, and this is, I would say every time, this is one of those cases I wish I didn't have to say this, but I think every time is, do we still have, even though we have velocity, this team working on this stuff gets this much done, and we can use that to forecast really accurately, right? 80 to 90%, right? Incredibly powerful. Yet we're still having senior leaders come in and say, I got to have this by Friday. Or, yeah, I need some of these people over here to get this thing done. And they're impacting the variability that we have to give them the predictability that they so strongly desire. But we don't have a feedback loop to show you're getting in the way of the very thing that you want. In this case, if I'm on those teams that keep getting impacted by these crazy dates being handed to us and fixed scope, fixed date and all that, I would be saying you're not even looking to our historical velocity to make these decisions. I would flag this as a no. I would have a feedback loop back to senior level execs saying, we can't get this to green to give you the overall goal that you have, predictability. Right? That's really powerful. So now you're not just slapping me on the wrist saying, don't do that, that's bad. You're saying, I can't give you what you're after because of what you're doing. So get out of their own way to get the results that they want, not just you're breaking the Scrum rules. What do I care if I'm a leader that I'm breaking the Scrum rules, right? I want what I want. Well, then what's in it for me means we're not checking the box here. So I think that's a key piece of this. Secondly, overall system becomes more knowledgeable and the need for change becomes readily apparent. Right? If I can say yes to those, we're making great progress. Data is collected, data is visible, all data is meaningful and used for process improvement, right? So this is probably getting back to predictability. Let me show you one quick glance at what I mean. I keep saying, here's a feedback loop back to management. I entered some data into their reporting tool that kind of shows you how are we doing on that. And we're looking at ability to measure under predictability. I think this one has a different goal for the data I set up. But you're going to recognize these. Visibility created. I think that's what we're just talking about. Make work visible, product backlog. Team ownership. Ability to, hold on. We have, ability to measure capabilities, and that's for predictability. I'm going to go back to where we just were. Yeah, ability to measure. So I'm looking for ability to measure. I'm seeing, this is a fun go live thing. It is in here somewhere. Let's see, ability to forecast. That's close. Informed decision making, and we have the ability to kind of drop down, see what does that mean. Transparent progress reporting. What does that mean? And say, how are we doing on that? So when they're asking for how's the agile transformation going, this is a much easier tool format to use to say, here's how we're doing. It's accurate for what we're working on, and what we're working on is the right stuff to hit their goals. And I got that feedback loop back to get you that goal. These are the things that are still in the way. We're trying to move these to green. I can change the priorities of these as well. But these are based on the assessment that you would fill out, checking with the teams where they're going back through this saying, do we have this or not for their goals? So you get business involved in the beginning, engaged at the beginning for the goals. You get kind of a recommended starting point for these things based on best practices. That's nice, optional, right? And then based on those, saying yes, no, how are we doing on a scale of 1 to 5? Are we or are we not making progress on those? Are we doing what we need to be doing as assessment tool and the feedback loop back to leadership for what their goals are? This is part of what Path to Agility gives you at a glance. I know it's just a glance, but think how complementary that is to think about culture from the competing values framework, which culture is important, and this organic, like let's just think about things that could get us there. I would also add, depending on the level of what I see as a pattern is maybe people are asked to lead transformations and they only have the experience they have, which may or may not be, full 360, multi-company, lots of different options, lots of different models used, SAFe, large-scale Scrum, Spotify, Scrum at scale, whatever that is, and they bring that in. And so you might feel, if you're a transformation leader or even a coach, you might feel limited in your tool set that you bring to the table because it's just your own experience of what you have. Now, Path to Agility would be kind of complementary. It's putting more tools in that because it's got a whole set of over 100 things that you could consider. Not everything, but the right, that you would use, but the right things for that goal. So it puts a lot of tools in towards that goal that should be the right things. It might make you feel more comfortable. Like, I don't need to know everything. Here's the recommended things to help hit that goal. So I can have a little confidence in kind of this best practice, not just from the folks that created this, from Agile Velocity, but also they have a community of guides around them who chip in and give feedback, and they've kind of made that collaboration open. So you're getting lots of coaches' feedback. So it's good recommendations just from everyone's standpoint as well that's been involved. So I like it for that. And then that feedback loop, when someone holds you accountable, like, are we making progress or not? You just pull up the dashboard and say, here's where we are. Or for team's sake, a huge win in the sales to help you clear out things for the teams, because I'm going, again, back to leadership saying, we can't get you what you want because the teams are saying we're still not getting, nice, solid, dedicated teams, etc. So that's part of what it's giving you. It's complementary to the competing values framework and culture that's fully organic. This is a little bit like putting you in the starting blocks. That is my very, very fast pass as a glimpse to that. I see a few more people joined. If you have questions, put them in the chat, put them in Q&A. Happy to answer those based on what we've seen. So I'll check for questions from anyone. And then also just do a quick story. If those who have been around, or been in the Cal workshops with competing values framework, or went through the videos and kind of understand competing values framework, you can see that based on this, if I'm a culture that's a control process oriented culture, which a lot of us are now, or if I'm in the PMO, if I'm a structured person who wants a plan, this is actually very appealing to that control red culture because it's best practices. That feels good. It gives us, a plan, a roadmap. That also feels really good. And an ability to measure, are we doing it right or not? Tell me how to do that. Tell me that we're doing it right. That's going to feel really good that we can check the box too. So if your culture is a control culture, I think it's a great fit. Not heavyweight and bureaucratic. Remember, that control culture taken to an extreme becomes bureaucratic. Some people feel and argue, understandably, that the Scaled Agile framework can be heavy or prescriptive, and I can see why, because it's hard to tell what should we be using. If you look at the roadmap, it's like this are the steps that you go to implement SAFe. But it appeals to red cultures because they got the full plan and everything. You can see that in terms of government, certainly insurance clients. You look at who's been using it. So that feels good. But now you have another option that's a lightweight, customizable option based on business goals that's still going to fit really well for that culture. And I think take a look at it. It's a good option and consideration. It's not going to feel as heavy or prescriptive. Whether that's right or wrong, that's how it feels. But most people argue and feel strongly that SAFe appeals to a control culture, at defense, military, etc. I don't argue with that at all. I totally agree. I've seen that in the companies that we've worked for, or very old established companies as well. So that's just on the big picture, competing values framework, how that might fit. I don't see any other questions. So that's the one comment I wanted to make at the end of that. Do look at sign up if you want to get notified of these in the future with a little more heads up, because we're starting to send out like, here's what's coming up for the next 4 weeks. Also be on the lookout for interviews. I've chatted with a couple of people about, just interviewing other coaches, hearing their stories, as well as transformation leaders. I think that would be really neat and helpful for you guys out there in the trenches doing the work. But look at that, sign up if you want to get heads up on those things, because we will pick up another piece of this and kind of drill in a bit more. I spend some more time on it because it's usually one of the more popular pieces of the Certified Agile Leadership Organizations class. If you take that one day Cal O, although truthfully I would take all 3, we reference this and actually do a bit of work of it on it in the Certified Agile Leadership Organizations class. But take a look. We have the upcoming class. It's just this alone, 2 different half-day sessions as well. If you have anything else, though, feel free to reach out. Glad to answer questions. But for now, hi Derek. Let me take a look. So there's a question in chat. So I appreciate that, Derek. It's been a long time, hasn't it? Derek says, some have argued the SAFe is commonly used to simply change the names of what we're currently doing in order to avoid change altogether. Do I have any thoughts on that idea? I've heard that numerous times, Derek. And for those who don't know, I am a certified, SAFe program consultant, SPC. I've been around it really since before there was SAFe. So when I was working with Rally, Dean Leffingwell was our chief methodologist at Rally. When I was working over at a large auction website company, they were doing release trains. This is before it kind of got codified. So I've been around from the beginning. I tried to get in the very first public class, caught the first ever public class. So that's my background. Done a couple of transformations, you could say adoptions, with it. But I've done it with other approaches as well. So I do feel that this idea of lots of different roles, if you look at SAFe, there's over 100 pieces to it, roles, artifacts, etc. I feel like at times SAFe is just a giant collection of best practices. So there's a lot of stuff, period. But the idea of keep having these new roles, there's something from LESS, Large Scale Scrum, so go to less.work so you can find more information about that there, that I really like, and this is a good principle. And someone just referenced this week, a leader, and said that was helpful, that the more roles we have, the less responsibility that we have. So if I have someone who's responsible for X, what does that mean for me? Well, I'm not responsible for it, so that's their job, not mine. Dev and QA is a great example. Oh, testing, that's QA's job. I'm a dev, I just do development. Well, now we're just team, right? We want to see QA and dev come together. It's not my work and your work, it's just our work. But if I have someone who's, let's say, responsible for architecture, well, that means my team no longer needs to worry about architecture because that person's going to take care of that. Well, in SAFe, you've got 2 different roles for architects, right? Not just one. So now you've abstracted. I think it's well-intentioned, but the default is you can't help but feel less responsible if someone else has got that. And you see a lot of these different roles created for that. Can you just say those are relabeling of what's already in there? Well, certainly for architect, I feel that the actual release train engineer is very much like a program manager or senior product manager. When I look at what they're responsible for and what the release train engineer is responsible for, I definitely feel like that's pretty similar to that. So I feel like the folks doing the work, yeah, we made additional roles just for that person, and it can hurt us in the end. So one, I think I would agree, it relabels some things rather than just say, let the teams own architecture, let the teams figure out how to coordinate the work across 12 teams, et cetera. And teams can. I've seen that. Do you really need to create another role? this is where we kind of get into dangerous waters, because now we got more and more roles, and people will say, what's my job now? Well, let's call you the, in the beginning it was not just project manager, now it's the agile project manager, right? It's the same thing, but we labeled it. People have a hard time going through change, so relabeling makes that change easier, but I think you shortchange it. So I would agree with you, Derek. I think we just made more labels for things that exist in our orgs without actually going through change. Scrum, and the people behind less would say this, and I really agree with it, with what Craig Larman. Really what we should be talking about is organizational redesign. And if we're avoiding organizational redesign, then our default will be, well, let's just relabel what we currently have, and can we check the box and say we're agile now? Or as they would say, change theater, a bunch of hand waving, hey, look at us, we're agile, but everything you look around like, but it feels just the same, except we got some new terminology. Yeah, that's probably what's happening in those situations. Very, very valid observation, Derek. Glad you put that in there. Appreciate the question. All right. If there is nothing else, I'm double checking before we end our time together. I hope these are helpful. Would love any feedback from you. We're running these as an experiment, as a way to keep engagement with you guys, help you keep moving forward. So give us feedback. That helps us determine what topics, what times of the day, how long do you want to spend together, etc. All that would be really welcome, helpful input for us as better ways to serve you guys. So let us know. Reach out to us. Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, good to see you again, too. Glad you could jump on. Appreciate that. Oh, and by the way, for those who join, let others know as well. Easy to join, right? Light touch. Help others take their next steps and figure out, learn, and grow, too. Would really appreciate that. So make notes, make comments, let others know, because we only reach the people we reach, but you guys have a much broader net than we would have. So I would appreciate that as well. I'm sure that would be of help to them. If you got value, then share that as well. I will pop out for now. And keep an eye out, get the information if you haven't signed up for more information, what's coming up next when we're doing these again, as well as just stay connected on LinkedIn. Hopefully we'll see you guys in the future. Thanks everyone, and bye for now. Thanks, Melissa. Woo! Glad you joined. Good to see you again.